Trafalgar Law and Monkey D. Luffy? Total opposites that make the perfect yin and yang. Punk Hazard and Thriller Bark? Long lost blood relatives that feel strangely alike, but with a defined line drawn in the sand. There is so much to take from Punk Hazard, a saga all about opposites attracting and similarities revealing things previously unknown to us. Ironically enough, Thriller and Punk both give us mad scientists with weird labs doing weird science experiments, posing as humanitarians while being backed by a warlord on the cusp of losing his job. But when we look at just Punk Hazard, we see how the Straw Hats and One Piece itself has grown post-Marineford. And at the crux of it all is Luffy and Law, instinct and logic, chaos and precision, the perfect yin and yang. And I mean that literally, like the actual definition of yin and yang. And you know, I probably should have picked up on that sooner, considering that the island of Punk Hazard itself is symbolism of that fact. In Marineford, Luffy lost one long-lost brother. Is it in Punk Hazard where he gains another? Luffy and Law are shown as polar opposites. As an audience, when you hear that Law became a warlord, you know just by knowing his character that he's using that title in some strategic way to get what he wants. But when Luffy gets a random distress call from a random employee who has a random unknown samurai attacker on a random island, which is the first and unknown island of the new world that he kind of randomly got into, you know just by knowing Luffy's character that he's gonna lead his whole crew there and get into whatever's going on. And lo and behold, Luffy does just that, and he puts on the first pair of legs he finds walking around claiming himself to be a centaur. But when Luffy and Law get together, they become the perfect balance. I use yin and yang because from everything that I'm reading about it, yin represents instincts and emotion, while yang represents logic and calculation. After I finished Punk Hazard and I was first making this video, I was just throwing around the term yin and yang in my own head just as like a figure of speech type of thing. But when I looked up what yin and yang actually meant, what they actually represented, I found that Oda was 37 steps ahead of me. Yet again. Let's start out with Luffy, who represents yin in this situation. All the symbolism you need is right there in front of you. Even his devil fruit is the rubber man. Let's pull out the engineering textbooks for a second and think about the properties of rubber. Rubber is very elastic. No matter how much you stretch it, no matter what situation you put it in, it always bounces back to equilibrium. And when you're working with rubber, it's very unpredictable. Luffy himself is chaotic, carefree, and unpredictable. When he wants to form an alliance, no, scratch that. When somebody wants to form an alliance with him, he does it without hesitation or consultation. And you know, we've all been watching the same One Piece at this point. He dives headfirst into danger, trusts his gut, no matter how reckless the situation is. Now let's look at Law, on the other hand, which is yang in this situation. The symbolism for Law is right there as well. Law's devil fruit is room. His devil fruit power is very calculated. You have to be very calculated to get a domain expansion set up on the field. That's essentially what he's doing. His devil fruit is so precise, you could cut out somebody's heart and you could cut the drugs out of somebody's body. Law himself is cold, strategic, precise. When he wants to form an alliance, it's on his term. He's thinking long term. He has motives that are clear to him, but not so clear to everybody else. And then he's literally a surgeon. And his name is Law. All right, so there we have it. The foundation is set and laid. Luffy and Law's strategies, or lack thereof, couldn't contrast any more than they actually do. But as we watch Punk Hazard, which was a great arc, we see that their contrasting styles make them stronger together. And even though they're polar opposites, they fit together and they add little pieces of their strengths to each other, kinda like. Now we kinda getting up to speed. Where Luffy brings chaos, Law brings control. Where Law is really cautious, Luffy brings boldness. But that's not necessarily the point of this video. The point of this video is this. The most important part of this character dynamic between Luffy and Law is that one half's biggest strength is the other half's biggest weakness. It's Luffy's impulsiveness that influences Law to act more boldly when he's too cautious, while Law's logic reins in Luffy's chaoticness. And now that I'm really thinking about it, just adding on to this, unlike the other Straw Hats, Law has the cachet of being a warlord who's not equal to Luffy, but a tier below. Law has enough cachet in his own right to be a pirate comparable to Luffy. Yeah, this is gonna be an interesting one because we gonna get into all of that. But first, hey, what's up y'all? It's The Bread Show, the place where we give our anime and gaming opinions while doing a little bit of animated and gaming ourselves. And yes, I am continuing on this long journey to watch all of One Piece. Last week, we did Fishman Island. This week, we did Punk Hazard. Punk Hazard was an amazing arc. It was just a lot of questions on top of questions on top of questions that made for a fun saga that directly leads into the next one that people have been hyping up a bunch. And me personally, I am excited for it all. Please leave a like and a comment. It really helps the channel out a lot, and y'all are my One Piece community. And whether you've seen me before or it's your first time, hopefully I can convince you to hit that subscribe button by the end of this video. Let's get straight to it. 5 volumes, 9 straw hats, and 1 heart pirate. And let's get straight into this with a 30-second summary. After getting a distress call, the Straw Hats arrive on Punk Hazard, an island divided by fire and ice because of a battle between Akainu and Aokiji. There, they discover Caesar Clown, a mad scientist performing chemical experiments on the children he kidnapped. Luffy forms a shaky alliance with Trafalgar Law, who has a secret vendetta against Doflamingo and whatever Doflamingo's doing. Together, they take down Caesar, but the arc ends with smoke signals of a larger issue, as the Law and Luffy alliance sets its sights on the Emperor of the Sea, Kaido. Doflamingo got absolutely bitched by Aokiji after it's all said and done. I'm going to get more into the Luffy and Law dynamic later on this video, because first, to really understand the Luffy and Law dynamic, I have to set the stage for this new era in this new world of One Piece we are watching now as compared to before. And what way to do that is better than comparing 2 arcs that are really similar to each other, but the only difference between them is a huge character arc in the middle. Punk Hazard feels like Thriller Bark's serious older cousin. Both arcs have similar setups, but the execution, no pun intended, is worlds apart. New worlds apart, pun intended. Both sagas have mad scientists that have gone way crazy. I cannot stress this enough. Subliminally feeding the kids you kidnap narcotic stimulant drugs might just be the most nefarious thing I've ever heard. If a pirate did that, then it'd be detestable. But the fact that a high-ranking Navy official had intel on this, not even intel was in on it, is ridiculous. I told y'all before, the world government is not as righteous as they seem. I hope that there's an arc dedicated to that later on somewhere in this. But the seriousness of that situation adds on to the fact that I'm trying to show y'all. We are not watching the same One Piece. And let me explain. Both Thriller Bark and Punk Hazard feel literally and figuratively detached from the rest of the One Piece world. Both places are literally hard to get to and tucked away. But figuratively, these stories don't directly affect the world government and the bigger pirates as much as other arcs have, like Marineford. The ironic part about it is that we can all agree that Luffy has matured since Marineford. I mean, there was a whole 100-episode character arc dedicated to that. But that hasn't necessarily made him less reckless. He's just reckless in a different way now. Even though these 2 arcs are very similar, there are differences that poke out. The stakes in Punk Hazard are higher. The nefariousness of the crimes in Punk Hazard are higher. The consequences of failure are much higher in Punk Hazard. Disclaimer, content warning right now. A One Piece character died in this arc. That says a lot. Dr. Hogback's experiments in Thriller Bark felt immoral, but kind of self-contained. Caesar's actions have literal global consequences. And Caesar isn't the main villain, he's just a cog in a bigger story. And now we can see how much darker Oda's letting One Piece story become. The Straw Hats had great moments in Thriller Bark. We made a review video about that. And in Punk Hazard, the Straw Hats get some big moments again. We gotta remember back in Thriller Bark, that was post Enies Lobby. They're scrappy, they're still learning together. Robin, Brooke, and Frankie still felt like new crew members at that point. But by Punk Hazard, they're all battle hardened. Luffy in Thriller Bark, he fought with sheer willpower, but he still heavily relied on luck and his crew. Example, on Thriller Bark, the only reason why Luffy was able to beat Moria in his superpower form was because he met the victims that helped him power up. In Punk Hazard, he's much more composed. He's more pulling out bags of tricks that he already had against enemies, while trusting in Law's strategies. Zoro and Sanji on Thriller Bark, they struggle against oars. In Punk Hazard, Zoro uses Haki to beat Monet, and Sanji legitimately holds his own against Virgo. I would count that as a loss, but he did his thing. And Brooke, I feel like a broken record here, but this guy is legit hilarious. I watched the English dub version of One Piece, and listening to Brooke makes me want to go back to the manga to see if he's still makes the same jokes and interrupts serious moments with bone jokes constantly. Turns out, yeah, he does it in the manga too. Is that important to know? Maybe not as much, but now you know. So yeah, in this arc, the Straw Hats definitely grow, but there's also a tonal shift. Thriller Bark was goofy horror comedy. It was like a haunted house, and not like an actual haunted house. It was more like a Disney attraction haunted house. I think everybody will agree with me when I say Punk Hazard is darker and more intense. The giant drug children are heartbreaking. The mass gas attack in an already nuclear war-torn place is an actual war crime. And yeah, even some Marines figuratively died in this arc. I mean, it's not all serious. Okay, we're talking One Piece here. Frankie and Chopper and all them splitting bodies was a comedy moment. So yeah, Thriller Bark and Punk Hazard are like distant cousins, but there's night and day differences between tones. Both are still fun to watch. I'm not knocking one or the other. I love both of these arcs. It's just that before we get to Luffy and Law, which is the heart of this whole thing, we have to understand that we're not watching the same One Piece that we were 200 episodes ago. Luffy and Law, two yin and yang forces, completely opposites of each other, but better together. This duo is setting the stage for the new world. Because of this alliance in the first arc of the new world, I know that Law is going to be an important character for many, many arcs going forward. But I also know that he won't be a Straw Hat because he has his own crew, wherever they are. Adding on to the fact that in the last arc, Jinbei clearly stated in a kind of foreshadowing kind of way, you cannot survive the new world by yourself, which makes perfect sense. After watching One Piece for all these hundreds of episodes, one thing that is clear to me is that Oda respects power scaling. If Alabasta Luffy is not supposed to be able to be toe to toe with Crocodile, the 7th Warlord of the Sea, he won't be toe to toe. If Sabaody Luffy punches somebody he's not supposed to punch, there are consequences by people that he cannot beat. Oda stays very true to the power scaling of One Piece. So when Jinbei, a warlord, says that nobody can survive alone, we have to take him at his word for that. So this Luffy and Law dynamic, I can already tell from the jump, is going to be very important, especially when now 3 out of the 4 warlords are not on Luffy's side at all. I said everything about Luffy and Law being yin and yang. What are the examples of all of these things? Luffy accepted an alliance where it was obvious that the person he was alliancing himself with was plotting on him longer than he was plotting on Law. And on the flip side, Law proposed an alliance that included stopping Caesar, Doflamingo, and Kaido. That's like 3 One Piece sagas. Each one of those 3 people get One Piece sagas. So it's obvious that Law has a lot going on in his head. And most importantly, he chooses when to let Luffy in on his plan. Another example for you. Luffy punched Caesar out of emotion based off things that he said, when the strategic plan thing to do was to capture Caesar and kidnap him like the plan was. And mind you, that was the second time Luffy fought Caesar. The first time he jumped in without even fully understanding his devil fruit powers. But Law, on the other hand, got a warlord title, positioned himself right next to Caesar for however long he was doing that before the Straw Hats even showed up there accidentally, and had a long elaborate plan about trading hearts to eventually get to Caesar. Off the first meetup, Luffy just tried to take him off his feet. Luffy met him and said, "I'm gonna punch you down." But one of the final and another important example is that Luffy believes in people to a fault. Even when Chopper, a Straw Hat, mind you, told him that he saw with his own eyes that Law was murdering the children at the end of the arc, Luffy did not act on that at all. He just said, Law ain't no killer. No, let me correct that. Traffy ain't no killer. Didn't even check up on the kids once. Just trusted Law over Chopper, the Straw Hat, who physically saw him. So if we think logically from Law's perspective, and one of my favorite things about Oda is that each character in One Piece makes decisions that align with their character so well, so it makes it so believable. From Law's perspective, the best person to form an alliance with is someone who blindly accepts anything and is also loyal to a fault. And I have an hilarious side note. If you don't know by now, Robin is my favorite Straw Hat, probably by far. When Robin first found out about Luffy and Law's alliance, Robin is the one that told Luffy, hey, he's a pirate and he's very likely to betray you at some point. And there is so much irony in that it's ridiculous. Robin has a running joke in the show of being straightforward, saying things no matter how insensitive it is. She doesn't spare anybody's feelings. And she kind of just soft launched the take that these strategic-less qualities is what attracted her to join the Straw Hats all the way back in Alabasta. I thought that was hilarious. The epitome of how Luffy is different than Law, but also kind of different than Caesar also, showed in the scene where the poison gas was building up inside the building. Chopper, Brook, and Kinemon were running outside the building, and Luffy stood there 10 toes down at the front door waiting for them to come out, not stressed at all, while Law and them, they're freaking out because the most strategic thing to do is to get a head start on running out of there. But Luffy just stood there trusting that his crew would be safe. No, he stood there trusting that his crew would be good enough to leave safely. It shows how Luffy is different than Caesar, because Caesar is the one that called the gas attack on his own crew, on his own factory. He coaxed them into gassing themselves and each other. It was like he was running a real-life war zone simulation with his own goons. Without Luffy, Law would be too calculated. It took him months, or however long it took him, to complete the Punk Hazard plan that Luffy completed in like a day or two of him being there. You can make the argument that Law was too cautious to make a move. Big goals require some level of risk-taking leading up to the big goal. On the flip side of that, without Law, Luffy would be too reckless. He would run headfirst into traps with no escape plans. Without some level of caution from Law, you find yourself easily in another Saba Odi punching the wrong person type situation that Law witnessed firsthand. And another side note, man, it's crazy how many implications that this random guy from Saba Odi had on the whole One Piece world. But anyways, Law and Luffy together, perfect balance. Freedom and control, emotion and logic, chaos and order, yin and yang. Punk Hazard has been super fun. It's just been questions and questions and questions leading on to deeper parts of the saga. And I usually end these videos with different questions I have going forward. I have 0 questions. I'm just super excited for Dressrosa, which has been foreshadowed heavily. I mean, every other scene was a live look into what's going on in Dressrosa. Smoker kind of missed the cut for this video, not for any reason. It's just, I guess I didn't see how he fit into the whole Luffy and Law character dynamic. I really like Smoker and the rest of G5 as Marines, to the point where I don't even see Smoker and the Straw Hats as enemies anymore, like two sides of one. Smoker is a lone wolf, does his own thing, and they're really rivals now. They're more rivals than they are enemies. Kind of like Kobe and Luffy. Tashigi though, as a character, she's fine on the side. As a fighter, somebody needs to take that sword out of her hand before she accidentally hurt herself, because she is getting her ass whooped every time. It is not long fight scenes either. I don't think she's had a fight scene that's lasted more than half an episode, more than a quarter of an episode. She just loses instantly to everybody she draws her sword against. She is the assest fighter in all of One Piece. I mean, come on now. This is post Marineford and she has not gotten any better. Her most important asset is that she looks like somebody from 600 episodes ago. But yeah, I like Smoker, and I view Smoker and Luffy as more rivals than enemies and enemies. Smoker was kind of the main enemy in Logtown, but ever since Logtown, they've constantly been working together every time they've met up. Doflamingo gives me a Vegeta Return of the Saiyans type vibe, but I cannot lie, he lost some aura points after that meetup with Aokiji at the end. I was watching that and I was kind of scared. I was like, Oda, are you really gonna make them fight right now? Come on now, respect the power scaling. You are a warlord, he is an admiral. You have no chance against him. And then Oda proceeded to make Aokiji be like a principal and Doflamingo is the school bully. Frankie got a few episodes of a top tier fight in this arc. Frankie gets rare moments in this show. And then my last little side point, I think it's crazy that Usopp made a weapon for Nami that's still doing numbers and still doing her thing. And he made that weapon for her all the way back in Alabasta. And I don't think it's been upgraded. She's just been learning how to use it better. What would she be off the ship wise without that weapon? Usopp gets props and claps just for that. But yeah, if you are still watching this video, please like, and hopefully I convince you to hit that subscribe button, and you will like all of my other One Piece videos, especially on this channel. I am currently watching Dressrosa, so hopefully the Dressrosa video will be ready by next week. Tune into the streams. Everybody catching the streams, thank y'all. I'm streaming a modded Minecraft Pixelmon server that y'all can join now, so yeah, definitely join us. I'll be streaming that with a few friends here and there. Every Tuesday I get with my group called the Fourth Branch, and we stream whatever random game, so suggest some random games for us to play on Tuesdays. We will be streaming that too. And if you missed the Tuesday stream, subscribe to the Fourth Branch channel where we upload the stream clips from everybody's stream. And that's like our group channel type thing. We play party games, we do IRL content, we do vlogs, we do everything on there. So yeah, definitely check me out. Going on the road to 10K, it feels good. Everybody, spread love, give inspiration in all you do, and peace out.
Welcome to the Show. Take 2.